Before we dive into Next.js, let's firstly discuss what is the difference between Next and React. And the main reason is that if you want to, in a React project, use multiple routes, you would need to bring in a React router, which is a third-party library that you would need to bring in. If you want to optimize images, you would need to configure it yourself if you want to preload them when they come in a view. That would require a manual configuration, SEO, same thing, you would need to bring in React Helmet to be in charge of the SEO meta tags on each of the pages. If you want to prefetch links, again, you would need to do some manual configuration, and the same applies if you need some pages or parts of your application to be server-side rendered or statically generated. Okay, so all these would require either third-party library or manual configuration, and that's exactly where Next.js becomes very handy. Next.js is using file-based routing, which means that you simply create a file inside of the pages directory and it will automatically resolve to that route. Same thing applies to a dynamic routing segments or dynamic route segments. There are these URLs where you want to, for example, load user details based on his ID, and you can simply create these dynamic routes and use the ID of the user inside of the page to load the correct data. The next benefit that comes out of the box with Next.js is the image optimization. If you use the Next component or image component from Next, all your images will be only loading the right size of the image and will be loaded when the image is in a viewport. Okay, so that's the another benefit. Then we go to link prefetching. So any link on the page, any internal link within your site on the page that the user can click on will be prefetched, and then when the user clicks on it, it will load very fast, okay, using client-side routing. So the interacting with links within your site will be very quick. And the last point on my slide is that you are in charge if you want your page to be server-side rendered, or if you want some URLs of your site or application to be statically generated, you can choose that as well. So Next.js gives you the option, do I want this page to be server-side rendered, client-side rendered, or pre-rendered or statically generated? You can choose that with Next.js. Here is another view of the differences between Next and React.js. There is one entry point, one root element, and everything is then injected inside of this div. So when the HTML from the server hits the browser, it has only one div on the page. There is no other markup. And that's why pure React is useful for single page applications, dashboard, or apps behind login, where client-side rendering is fine and the HTML doesn't have to be on the page. That's where React is useful. On the other hand, Next.js will send from the server full HTML, so all the markup will be on the page, ready to be indexed by Google. And if you still want to keep one or two of the routes behaving like the single page application, you can still do that. So you can choose either SPA or pre-render the page. SEO benefits is the biggest benefit of having all the HTML already on the page. So Google will not have any trouble indexing the content and ranking your site higher. Of course, the biggest trend these days is to statically generate the whole site, pre-render all the URLs, all the possible URLs on the site, and serve it as static HTML, and Next.js is a great option for that too. And we've already talked about the server-side rendering versus client-side rendering. What you will use in this demo is create Next app to bootstrap it. Then we'll use Tailwind CSS for styling our component. Then we'll use React hooks form to do the form validation and don't hit the API unless the form is valid. Then we use React query to hit the API endpoint that will then send the request to ConvertKit and sign up the user. And we will deploy the component to Vercel, so you can see how to set up the environmental variables and how to deploy it from your local host all the way to Vercel. So that's the plan for our component. And what you need is just the GitHub account. Hopefully you already have one. If not, get it, it's free. Vercel account, same thing. If you want to follow the deployment, then you would need a Vercel account. And ConvertKit account if you want to start building your own email list, or if you just want to learn how it all hangs together.